Hello and welcome to the Growing Pains podcast, where I speak to founders and business leaders about the realities of building and scaling a business. This week, I'm delighted to be joined by Dan Acutt, who is a profiling guru and founder of Profile Test AI. A very warm welcome to the podcast, Dan.
Hello. Thanks for having me, Harry.
No problem at all. Well, why don't you start us off with perhaps the most important part of your world, I guess, which is what is the importance of profiling to businesses?
Yeah. Well, thanks for asking the question, and obviously hello to all the listeners as well. You know, profiling can either go one of two ways. One is it's seen as invasive, and the other is it's seen as opportunistic. And that's really just a personal feeling on how people's approach to it. So, for example, if you look at it from an opportunistic perspective, it's about taking you out the box and saying, okay, this is who I am. What can I do? What's going to work for me? What's not going to work for me? I can make better decisions about my next steps because these are my natural flows, my natural strengths, my natural abilities. The other side of it is the inward facing, where people think that, if I know too much, uh, then everybody knows too much about myself, or I'm too well known. But the reality is, you're well known anyway. You just it's just about how you use that information to move forward. So profiling in particular, I don't know if you know this, Harry, but it started with Myers-Briggs during the Great War, World War One, where it was all about, it probably started with a negative effect, which was who are going to be the people that we send to the front line, who are the people that are going to be stable and going to just get on with it and, throw themselves into this process, compared to people that would be, maybe less excited about taking those leaps and the chances. And that's where it started, and it really influenced the way that the war, continued and even progressed as well. But 100 years later, probably, 120 years later, no, 107 years later, excuse me, maths is not so good. Um, it's used today in many different aspects. When we think about profiling in particular, it's used for recruitment, it's used for team fit, for coaching, for career guidance. And now, as we talk about this, comes into predictive intelligence.
I mean, fascinating in terms of how far it goes back, but also in some cases for you, the tools that we're still using and yeah, kind of, I'll leave that for people to make their own judgments on the sort of dating of those in particular. So with that in mind, what does your kind of growth journey through profiling look like, and how has that brought us to where you are today?
Yeah, I think that, profiling in particular has become popular because of gurus. Because of people that use it as part of their coaching or training experience. Roger Hamilton, Brian Tracy, John Maxwell, all these people have their own version of some kind of profiling system. Tony Robbins with DISC, for example. And, when you think about the journey and what everybody's kind of gone through, it's been designed for one thing, which is how do they understand their customers better, and then use that as part of that process. And, what we found, and where this journey kind of started for me, which is about 14 years ago, in having my first exposure and experience this, was fascination. Where when people learn about themselves and they go, wow, that's me to a T, the first response is fascination, which is like, how did you know that? Or how did that work? But the reality is that people actually are more predictable than they think they are. In certain situations. So 14 years ago, starting profiling, I've been working in profiling companies for years. Have worked with thousands of entrepreneurs, coaches in terms of profiling. I've also saved a few marriages, let me tell you, in helping people understand each other. That's not my business model, but it has happened. But the reality is that, when used in the right way, and for the right reasons, it can be highly effective and highly influential.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you say, this is not aimed at sort of marriage counseling, but you've got another product on the way. So talk to us about your products for the moment, and also what the new one is aimed at achieving.
Yeah, so I'll start with a little bit about the vision of where I'm going, because we saw profiling as a very static process at the moment, where you go through a test, you get a result, and that's the end of the journey that takes place. What we do, or what I've looked at it as, is okay. Now that place where other companies are, that's the beginning of where we are. So we at the moment have the system and the tools that is the same, if not better, than our competitors, but that's the end of their journey, and this is the beginning of our journey. So we are, have a long future ahead of us in terms of implementing this stuff into recruitment, team design, selling, making sure that there's matchmaking with regards to buyers and sellers. The opportunity is really, really a tremendous one to use this in the best way. When we think about where we are, is that our competitors have built a test, they built a system that they use. I looked at it differently. I looked at, well, how could we have more people create these systems and use them for different reasons? So we developed something called Mind Canvas. And Mind Canvas is our AI profiling brain. And sometimes this is hard for people to understand because they're so used to a specific test or a specific experience that they've been through. But Mind Canvas was designed and built in a way. By the way, most tech products takes 18 months to build. We did it in 6 months. So shout out to Lisa, my head of product. She's amazing. But there was a caveat. But typically, Mind Canvas is really designed for us to be able to custom build and deploy any profiling system that you want. It's designed so that we can create a framework. We can create any number of profiles, any number of behavioral, tendencies, any amount of operating styles. 7, 9, 12, 16. It makes no difference because we're not building one framework. We built the environment for any framework to really thrive. So that's what I wanted to cover that first because if we work with a company, an investment company, we can create a system for them that is then used in that environment that gives them the insights and data that they need to make decisions. Or if there's a research company that needs something that's going to collect more different data that connects that to different outcomes, we do that. So that's what Mind Canvas is designed for, and that's being deployed, which is really exciting. And going on to your question about the products and services, is that right now we have two main products that we have. One is the Mind Canvas profiling system. So this is specifically designed for delivery, where you take somebody through a test, you get a result, and that gives you the ability, the insights, information to lead them on some kind of journey. We have generic systems and we have custom systems. So generic ones are designed for leaders, they're designed for team members, etc., entrepreneurs that you can use with them. Alternatively, if you are somebody that is in a place where you're working with a niche target audience, you can create a custom system for that. So if let's say you're working with vets, I don't know, veterinary practice business owners, and that's your target audience, we can actually develop a system that's relevant to that industry. So that's the main product, which is Mind Canvas profiling. And then the other one, which you're mentioning, is a new product that we just launched this week, which I'm very excited about. And this is called Quantum Source Code. But don't be fazed by the name. It's designed in a way of how do you understand somebody's ability to think, to decide, and to buy. So it's a matchmaking kind of system where you send out this to one of your prospects. They will take an assessment. They will get an incredibly valuable result in terms of understanding how they grow. So they'll get a strategic growth plan that's designed for them all around their behavioral types, around their mindset levels, around where they're at in their business and what's next. But you get to understand everything about that individual as well. And it's a great opportunity to look at it from, are my products going to solve this person's problem? And if it is, then it's a fantastic opportunity to pitch it at the level that you get. So it gives you the insights, how to communicate to them, how they think and buy and decide, maybe challenges, blockers, things like that along the way. So those are two examples of what we built. But I really don't want people to get stuck into, okay, that's the system, because it really is exciting that I can officially say that we can develop any kind of behavioral system that people want to create, whether that be for health, measuring anything. So it's an opportunity, and it's very exciting for us to be in this place because nobody else is doing this in the market. A lot of founders, I'm sure, have told you before that nobody else has done this before. Well, people have done profiling, but nobody's ever created a system that allows profiling to be unique.
And I like that because actually it goes back to what you were talking about at the beginning in the sort of use cases and when you use profiling, because
Mm.
actually there are fairly traditional areas of, oh, well, we might use it here and people are sort of set with those. But actually, the more you have profiles, you go from customer profiles to new hires. Do you see this as something that can go across the entirety of somebody's business?
I mean, absolutely. With the wave of AI, I mean, we actually, our domain is profiletest.ai. And everyone says to me, "How did you get that domain?" And I say, "Well, actually, I had this vision like over 2 years ago. So I bought it before this big craze came out, and we never used it until this year, where probably about 60% of our product is AI driven, from concept to framework to developing to launching and engagement as well. Now, when you think about your question around use cases and where it can go, you know, it really depends on the niche audience and what they want the experienced person or the test taker to go through. Um, right now, we use AI from a large database of proven information to provide this unique data to a specific outcome. So I'll give you an example. So if somebody takes quantum source code, the content that they see is designed with all 20 different quantum profiles in mind. They get a result, and then the AI pulls out the relevant data that's relevant based on their frequencies and their measurements of how their profile comes out. So if you have 70% of this and 20% of that, you'll see 70% of this and 20% of that. And that's how we see it working. So that means that, when we look at this as an integration, it can go into companies, teams, somebody that's feeling like they need a real shift in their business. They need new insights. They need a new way to really think about how they place people, how people operate. Those are the kind of companies that we love to work with because they're being innovative themselves, and we can deliver on those products to them too.
I guess that's one of the questions is how have you found people's attitude towards the use of AI? Because there's a lot of talk about it, but actually the adoption of it and fear mongering around it plays a part as well. What's been your take?
Yeah, I think people's experience comes from confusion. And they're just sharing stuff, and then social media doesn't help either, because the minute somebody shares an opinion, then it escalates and gets out of control. But we look at AI as not a enabler, but an accelerator. So, thinking about it in the term of how do you go from A to B in the fastest way possible, AI helps you with that. But we all know that when you put a bad prompt or you use something incorrectly, it gives you bad outcomes. And it's like anything. If you put, a wrong person in a wrong role, you're going to expect a bad outcome. There's nothing new about this theory. It's the same concept. It's just that AI is just speeding up the process. So we use a few different systems that are integrated with our backend system. And when we think about AI and what it is, it's all about adding relevant content and relevant insights to the user. So it's not about replacing people. I think that's a very big misconception. It's about making people's jobs faster, simpler, better. And when you think about how it's being implemented these days, a lot of people are using it for the wrong reasons. Don't use AI to write your sales scripts. I mean, it really is so generic. When we use AI to build reports for our clients, we don't just put a framework in and say, okay, that's the report. We go through every section and we expand it and we add and we check and we balance. But if we had to do that work all manually, it's going to take us 6 weeks. But because of the way that we do it with AI, it takes us, a couple of days to review and check and balance along the way. So that's how we see AI is all about, acceleration, not replacement or enablement.
Mhm. And you talked about then having an increasing number of products, but also an ability to tailor for clients.
Mm.
What's the sort of level to which you're looking to do that now, and are you looking to scale your own part of the business?
Yeah. I mean, when we launched Quantum Source Code, the Lisa, my head of product, came back to me. She said, okay, it's going to take me 2 weeks to build this. And we're like, okay, 2 weeks. That's fair. And then 24 hours later, she came and said, unfortunately, Mind Canvas worked too well, and we're nearly ready to launch. So it was, it was this whole thing. It was like, okay, well, it did better than we expected it to, which is fantastic. So when we think about, um, you, you, your specific question around, how do we go and how do we use these kind of systems? We look at, um, we look at Mind Canvas and the use cases in a way that it really is about, um, customizing these for different industries. So we this thought process of putting people in a box, with the other side of it. It's like, how do you take people out the box? And that's the way that I think about it. Because many times in the past with profiling tools that we've used, the response is very similar, which is, I feel like that is me, but I hate to be put in this box. Whereas because of the uniqueness of the results, it really is about, how do you get out the box? How do you open up your opportunity and think differently about your approach and make better decisions and better choices? So when you think about the customization of these products and services, our main target audience up until now has been executive coaches, those people that are using profiling systems with their clients. Um, why you would use us is a few reasons. One is your niche, your IP, your content, your data, your legacy. The other reason is data protection. The minute you use a generic system, your data is not your data; it belongs to them. So all your clients are being sold other things. That was a big problem that we really wanted to solve. The third was cost. A lot of the competitors and companies in the world, they charge a lot of money for this. So they've made it a premium product. And we're doing the opposite of it. We're saying, well, we know that we can help more people if more people have accessibility and have access to these products and services. So we make it more cost effective so that we can, impact more. So that's been our traditional target audience. But we also work with consultancies, training companies, schools, and any kind of organization that's looking for some kind of smart way to accelerate their process. I think that's an important one to understand. For example, the school we work with in the US, they're a virtual school, and the system we built for them is all about helping. So virtual school means the kids are at home learning, and the parents have to guide, certain things. So how we helped them was we created a system that helps parents to understand their profile so they can support their children and support their children in the best way in their learning environment. Don't be overpowering. Don't do this. Don't do that. This is how you can do it. This is how you get the best out of them, etc. So the the use cases are opening up now into. It's not just about teams. It's not just about right people, right seats. There's so much possibility, Harry, that can be used. If you just sit down and think a little bit differently about what outcome you're looking for, we can plug this part into a piece of your puzzle, not changing your whole system. We don't have to build a whole new whatever. There's no change in funnels, none of that stuff. It's just one piece of the puzzle that escalates the information and the understanding.
And how much around that, as the use case grows, do you find you're having to educate audiences on the potential of it, or have you got a lot of people approaching you for what your products might be able to do?
Yeah, it's interesting because our first approach was custom building these systems. We didn't have anything generic because that was our audience. And people kept coming back to us and saying, we don't want to spend that kind of money developing a system. Do you have something else? And we didn't at the time, but when we launched Mind Canvas, we started building some generic systems. So we have a few generic systems that are very inexpensive to use and get involved with. The target audiences are entrepreneurs, team leaders, maybe in a corporate or working environment, team members. You be able to have access to these products that can really help you grow your business and also scale. But why a custom system is really for that kind of control, that brand, that IP, that exposure, but other opportunities as well, Harry, like licensing. How do you license your products? If you're a coach and you're delivering everything, you're going to get to a point where you're so busy that you think, okay, how do I hire people, or do I build a training academy for other coaches, or whatever I do? And all of those things just take more time of yours. Whereas licensing your product is a way that you can then have more users use it. You can then support and deliver on even your business that you have coming in. So when we think about it and the kind of people we're working with, is that typically people don't wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and go, I want a profiling system. It's not what they think about. So that's been an interesting journey. But part of our process as quantum source code is people do wake up in the morning at 3 a.m. and go, I need new leads. Need better conversions. I need better sales. And that's what quantum source code is about. So when we see opportunities and people come to us and say, is there something that can do this, or is there something that can do that? Then we can put a framework together and we can create it and can deploy it really quickly.
Yeah. And speaking of growth, what have you found for growing the business to date, but also, I guess, taking a new product to market have been the biggest challenges to this point?
There's a lot of people in the market that talk about different ways that you launch products and, this and that and whatever. And, I think for me, the ability to pivot and understand your customers and understand the market is a crucial step in the process because, you come up with an idea, you think, oh, this is going to be a game changer. And then the first person you pitch is like, nah, not interested. And then your dream is destroyed, right? But it's about sometimes there's a bit of resilience that takes place. But I think if I had to think back in my experience, 3 years ago, my because what we were building was very unique. We didn't think about necessarily cash flow at the time. We're going to raise money. We're going to do all these things. Um, but in hindsight, what we should have done, which would have made our journey faster. But there's also a negative connotation to this, and I'll explain that in a moment. Is that if we had developed a cash flow business first that generated the cash we could continue to invest in our products and services, that would have been better. But the negative side of that is that would have probably taken us on a different path. Because when you're looking at developing products and services, when people try it and they love it, but they don't, they like it, but they don't love it, you can't go in that direction because it's just going to be hard and hard and hard no matter which way you go and however forward however you move forward. But when people try it and they come back to you and they say, I love this, um, that for me is kind of a key factor. I love this. How do I use it? I love this. I can share this with this person. I love this. This has really made an impact on my life. And it's a good opportunity to talk about a testimonial. One of our early adopters, Chandel Labazetta, who's also our CRO as well now, we've lured her in to come and help us grow. She, she was an early adopter of us. We built a manual system for her. It was fantastic, but it was basic, right? And, the vision of, I promise you it's coming. It's going to be better. There's more stuff happening. There's more features. It's all coming. Like, stick with us. And she did. And we did a briefing yesterday with her team and a review of the new system and everything that they have. And her head of operations, her name is Kalia, she said to me, when I first read the reports and I first read everything, I was like, yeah, this is great. This is nice. Nice to have. But this week, the experience she had, she just said it was just so transformational, the experience she went through because of the insights and the data and how perfect it was and the experience and the knowledge. And, and that's a real transformation for us because that was what we wanted to get to. We wanted to get to a point that every person that takes a test or owns a test or refers, whatever it is, just loves it and can say, this is really going to impact my life. And that's an important part about any feature that we develop going forward.
Yeah, there's no better feedback than that. And so on the growth journey, in terms of scaling from here, are you looking for investment?
We've got a few investors in the pipeline. And so the answer is yes. The problem with raising money is that, I have spoken to a lot of investors. So if anybody wants advice on investors, let me know. Um, the, the, a lot of investors want proof and traction. And then you think, okay, I've now got sales and I've got traction. And they're like, okay, but it's not enough traction. So there is no metric. There is no way that you can raise money on because the valuations are all a guessing game based on some models. No one is ever going to get it right. It's just about whether it feels right and it looks good and it's a good deal. That's what it is. And the reality is that raising money takes a lot of effort and a lot of time. So for me, my focus has shifted from necessarily trying to raise money to focus on revenue and growth, which is why we have a CRO on board now. Because, when we get to, I don't know, 100 users for us is all the money we need in the world to do all the development we need with all, everything. And, we do have investors. We've done a pre-seed round. We raised a couple £100,000 earlier on. And our seed round now, the next round we do will be probably for at least 1 million that we want to raise. But we don't need it right now. And I think that's a key point, is like raising money from a need perspective is everything's going to be wrong. All the signals are wrong. But raising money from okay, this is working, how do I 10 times this perspective? That's when everybody's interested. And there are some great companies out there. There are Founder and Lightning is a fantastic one where they invest in the development as well as the product. Then that's Matt Johns. You've got SFC Capital as well, is an SEIS fund in the UK, also really great. But the opportunity really is, when you think about raising money as an entrepreneur, is the reason you want to raise money. If it's to fund your business or your lifestyle, that's not the right reason to raise money.
Yeah. So with that in mind, obviously nice to have the luxury of choice in that regard and sort of focus on the organic growth. What does the sort of forecast and the targets look like for 12 to 18 months for you guys in growth terms?
Well, I'm really glad you asked that, because this year has been a proof year. So we've really specifically not scaled anything. I mean, I would have loved more customers, don't get me wrong, but more customers would have been more headaches, because every customer we have so far, we've really been involved with. We've learned what they want. We've built stuff. We've evolved. Their commitment and paying us upfront and that kind of deal has been great. The thought process now going forward is that this year, even though we didn't have much products last year, we've 10 times our revenue this year. I'm not talking millions, but we still 10 times our growth, which is a great story. Now we have the products that can allow us to scale. So the lesson in that is, if you can build your stuff manually first and people can buy it and adopt it and get onto it, you learn from them what the real product is going to be. And then you evolve and you develop that product so that they can deliver all the things that they need to deliver. And that's a crucial part in our process, because some of our clients have been using like 5 or 6 different products to get the same result that we've created in one product for them. So it's an interesting thought process about this, is that, speed up time, cost, data privacy, protection, uniqueness, all this kind of stuff is where we get into this motion. So thinking about growth for us is that, we would love to do another 5 to 10 times growth next year. And I know that is a lot. I know it seems like, a hell of a lot of growth. But I think that when people start to see opportunity and they start to see what this can do for them and their business and how they grow, and that we actually care about them and their success, this makes a big difference, because we're not a big player in the industry. We're not yet a big player, but I promise you very soon we will be, and we will always keep and stick to our roots and help people to grow and move forward.
Fantastic. And I guess if we come back to where we started in terms of profiling as a concept, what would your message be to anybody that's considering, or even if they're not, about what value it can add to their business?
Well, it's a great question, because from an employee perspective, the statistics are shocking. Over 70% of employees hate their jobs. And I use the word hate not lightly, because people are actively going to work every day going, "Ugh, this is such a drain, it's such a bore." And they think, oh, it's because people don't want to work. But it's not about that. People love to work. We've been working for thousands of years. It's not about work. It's about what you do that energizes you. And I think this is a key point, because when we look at profiling from a career guidance perspective, that's like, okay, I'm going to be an engineer, I'm going to be this, or I'm going to be that. Well, no, that's the wrong question. It's the wrong thought process. The right thought process is, how do I naturally show up? How am I going to thrive? My energy, my flow, all that kind of stuff. If I can get that to thrive, then what industry is that? What job is that? And there's a job for everyone. Not everybody wants to be on the phone, phoning for, payments or whatever. But there are people that do like to do that. And it's just about making sure that those people understand who they are. So I guess the question comes down to, you know, Two reasons. If you're a team member and you feel like you're struggling or you're not in flow or, why is work so hard, etc., 100% find a test and take a test, whether it's one of ours or another one. There's lots of free ones as well in the market. Learn about yourself, learn what makes you tick, because that's going to help you make better decisions going forward. Um, and from a leader's or an entrepreneur perspective, think about growth and think about your next stage of business, because what got you to this stage in your business is not going to take you to the next stage in the business. You have to rethink it and rethink the thought process around, how you approach it. So the timing is great. The end of 2025, it's been a very tough year for everybody across the board. And 2026 is a new numbers year. So it's a refreshing springtime. Everything is going to kick off. So if you've got any ideas, anything that you want to launch, you want to try, next year is the year. But be careful about the direction you go in, because if you accelerate 1 degree in the wrong direction, you're going to end up in a whole new country. So yeah, that would be my take.
I like that. And obviously the sort of personal profiling can cover all manner of briefs. When it comes to the quantum source code, what's your ideal customer?
Anybody that is doing video sales calls would be a perfect customer. So that would be, any type of SME company, even a founding member. And the reason video sales calls, because there's a process that takes place before that happens. And, you know, it, it really is, if you think about the process or what it's designed for, is that it's not about manipulation. It's about understanding who you're selling to and why you're selling to them and whether your product is going to really solve their problem, because that becomes an easier conversation. So when somebody uses quantum source code as part of their sales journey and their predictive intelligence journey, it tells you all about not just their buying signals and stuff, but we also have an extended source code, which is a playbook on that specific profile and that result, where you learn how to really build trust with these people. Because a sale, in my experience, or trusted selling, which I learned from Michelle Clark, a great mentor of mine, she taught me this process of trusted selling, which is all about, people buy from you and they trust, know, and like you, right? And the thought process is, how do you build trust with people very quickly? I've learned this process, but not everybody has the ability to do that. So having this opportunity to learn about people in advance and how to approach them, how to get into the right state, how to, what the right language is, are they going to be people that are going to make decision on their call, or are they not going to make, because if they aren't, and you do try and close them on their call, you've lost the sale. So it's knowing that kind of data and information, which makes such a huge difference to the whole process. And I see it as a win-win-win all around, because, if the customer knows what they're looking for, you know what they're looking for, and your product solves their problem, then we don't have to be, pitched all sorts of stuff that's irrelevant in our lives all the time, like Meta, for example, sending you these ads of random things and hoping you'll bite on something. Like, I mean, it's just like, I'm not interested in any of that stuff. So that was my take on it, which was, how do you get smarter around it? How do your customers get smarter? Because I think that when we do this, we will do more work together. We'll be able to charge more. We'll be able to have happier customers, customers that refer you, that they come back over and over again and buy more from you. I think there's a bigger thing here around this trusted sales, and that's what predictive selling and what quantum source code is all about and trying to create.
Fantastic. Well, I think that's a very strong note to end on. But thank you very, very much for your time. And if anyone is interested in any of the concepts we've discussed, please do reach out to Dan, and I'm sure he'd be delighted to help. Thank you, Dan.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. It was great to chat to you, Harry, and thank you to listeners.